The kiss landed on her scar, not beside it, not near it, directly on the ruined flesh that covered half her face, the twisted skin she had hidden since the fire. The mark she believed made her unlovable. Celeste Marlowe stood frozen in the dark alley behind the bar, her back pressed against cold brick, tears streaming down her cheeks. 30 seconds ago, she had been running from the phone pointed at her face, running from the whispers, running from the life she had tried so desperately to rebuild. Now a man she barely knew was kissing the part of her she hated most. Bennett Ashford pulled back slowly, his hand still cradling her face. His thumbs brushed away her tears. "This," he whispered, "does not define who you are." Earlier that evening, the bar was warm. Edison bulbs cast golden light across exposed brick walls. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with its usual Friday night energy, but inside this corner booth, Celeste felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She checked her phone again. 7:15. He was supposed to be here at 7, her first date since the fire. The thought made her stomach clench. She had almost canceled 6 times, but her therapist's words echoed in her mind. You cannot heal in isolation. You have to let people see you eventually. She took a sip of wine to calm her nerves. The memory came without warning, as it always did. Her mother's apartment, the painting Celeste had just finished, a watercolor of the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. Her mother hanging it on the wall, stepping back to admire it, turning with that proud smile that Celeste would give anything to see one more time. My daughter is going to be the most famous artist in New York. Then smoke, creeping under the door like a living thing. The first orange flicker of flame reflected in her mother's eyes. Celeste squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself back to the present. Not tonight. She would not let the memories win tonight. The door opened. Bennett Ashford walked in, and he was not alone. A little girl held his hand, maybe 7 years old, with curly brown hair and enormous blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She looked around the bar with undisguised wonder, as if she had just stepped into a castle. Bennett spotted Celeste and made his way over, his expression apologetic. I am so sorry I'm late. My babysitter got sick at the last minute, and my sister Maren wasn't available, and I couldn't just... He trailed off, gesturing helplessly at the child. This is Piper, my daughter. Something shifted inside Celeste. She had expected awkwardness on this date. She had expected the moment when he would see her scar and his eyes would change. She had expected pity or revulsion, or the careful politeness that hurt worst of all. She had not expected a 7-year-old in a purple dress with stars on it. It's fine, Celeste said, and found that she meant it. Please, sit down. Bennett helped Piper into a chair, ordered her apple juice and chicken fingers, and turned back to Celeste with visible relief. Thank you for understanding. Being a single parent means plans change constantly. Celeste nodded, keeping her head tilted so her hair maintained its protective curtain over the left side of her face, a habit so ingrained she no longer thought about it. They talked about his work as an architect, designing buildings that brought light into dark spaces, about her years as an artist before everything changed, the galleries that had shown her work, the dreams she had carried, about the strange experience of trying to date in your 30s when the world felt like it had moved on without you. Bennett was funny and kind, and when he laughed, his whole face transformed. Celeste found herself smiling more than she had in months. She almost forgot to be afraid. But Piper was watching her. Children do not follow social rules. They do not pretend not to notice things. They stare with unfiltered curiosity, and Piper had been staring at Celeste's hair for the past 10 minutes with an intensity that made the air feel thick. What's that on your face? The question cut through the conversation like a blade. Piper! Bennett's voice was sharp with embarrassment, but Celeste was already frozen. Her hand flew up instinctively, pressing her hair tighter against her cheek. It's, it's a burn. From a fire. Piper tilted her head, studying what she could see of the scar. Her expression held no disgust, no fear, just the genuine curiosity of a child who had not yet learned to look away from things that made adults uncomfortable. "It looks like lightning," Piper said thoughtfully. "Like the lightning in my storybook. Are you a superhero?" Celeste felt the air leave her lungs. Since the fire, she had watched people's faces change when they saw her. She had been called a monster by teenagers on the subway. She had watched men lose interest the moment she turned her head the wrong way. She had learned to live in the shadows, to time her grocery trips for late at night, to avoid mirrors like they were enemies. And this child looked at her scar and saw a superhero. I, I don't know." Celeste's voice cracked on the words. Piper nodded seriously. "I think you are. Only superheroes have special marks, like how you can tell which ones have powers." Bennett reached across the table and touched Celeste's hand. His eyes were soft with something that looked dangerously like understanding. "Kids see things differently," he said quietly. "Sometimes more clearly than the rest of us." Celeste excused herself to use the restroom, needing a moment to compose herself. When she returned, weaving between tables, she did not notice the blonde woman sitting 3 tables away. Brinley Ashford was everything Celeste used to be: flawless skin, perfect hair, the kind of beauty that made people stop and stare. 2.3 million followers hung on her every post, her every perfectly filtered moment. She was also Bennett's distant cousin, though they had not spoken in years. Family reunions had become uncomfortable after Brinley's mother and Bennett's father stopped speaking over some inheritance dispute. But she recognized Bennett immediately, and she recognized Celeste, not from the fire, from before, 8 years ago, NYU's annual student art exhibition. Celeste had submitted a watercolor portrait of her mother, painted with love visible in every brushstroke, every careful blend of color. Brinley had submitted a large abstract piece, all sharp angles and bold statements, designed to impress the judges with its sophistication and daring. Celeste won first place. Brinley came second. It should not have mattered. It was a college art show, not the Met Gala. But Brinley had built her entire identity on being the best at everything she touched. Second place felt like failure, and failure demanded someone to blame. She had watched Celeste's career blossom after graduation, watched her land gallery shows in Chelsea while Brinley pivoted to social media, telling herself that influencing was the future anyway. Watched Celeste succeed in the art world that Brinley had secretly wanted more than she would ever admit. Then the fire happened, and Brinley had felt something she would never acknowledge, not even to herself: satisfaction. Now seeing Celeste here in this bar, trying to rebuild her life, trying to date, trying to be happy despite that ruined face. Brinley smiled and raised her phone. Celeste sat back down across from Bennett, unaware she was being filmed. Piper had gotten up to look at something across the room. Now she came running back, excited about a fish tank she had discovered near the restrooms. And in her enthusiasm, she tripped on a chair leg. She fell against Celeste, small hands grabbing for purchase and catching Celeste's hair. The protective curtain swept aside. For one terrible moment, Celeste's scar was fully exposed under the bar's warm lights, the twisted flesh that ran from her temple to her jaw, the permanent redness that would never fade, the skin that would never be smooth again. Brinley captured every second, her smile widening. Celeste saw the phone, saw the woman behind it, the cruel satisfaction on those perfect lips. Recognition flickered somewhere in the back of her mind, but panic drowned everything else. Something inside her shattered. "Don't look!" The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. "Don't look at me! I'm disgusting!" She ran. past the startled patrons, past the bartender calling after her, through the back door and into the alley behind the building, where the shadows were deep and no one could see what the fire had made of her. She pressed herself against the brick wall and sobbed. All those months of therapy, all those careful steps toward healing, and it took 30 seconds to destroy everything. The door opened behind her. "Celeste!" Bennett's voice. She pressed harder against the wall, hiding her face with both hands. "Please go. Please don't look at me." She heard his footsteps, coming closer, not retreating like they should. Celeste. His hands were gentle as they turned her around, gentle as they lifted her chin, gentle as they brushed the hair from her face, exposing the scar she had tried so desperately to hide. He looked at her, really looked at her, at all of her, and then he kissed her scar. Piper found them a minute later, having followed her father through the back door. She wrapped her small arms around Celeste's legs and squeezed with all the strength in her 7-year-old body. "Don't cry, Lightning Lady. Superheroes aren't supposed to cry." Celeste knelt down and hugged the little girl, tears still falling, but different now. Not tears of shame, something else, something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Inside the bar, Brinley Ashford uploaded her video with a caption designed to destroy. "First date horror show. Imagine showing up looking like that." The view counter began to climb. The next morning, Celeste woke to 47 notifications. She reached for her phone with sleep-heavy hands, confused by the number. She never got this many messages. Her social media presence had dwindled to almost nothing since the fire. The video had 800,000 views. She sat up slowly, scrolling through the comments with growing horror as the morning light crept through her curtains. "I'd run too if I looked like that. Poor guy got catfished. She should stay home forever. This is why some people shouldn't be allowed to date. What a monster. Kill it with fire. Oh wait, someone already tried." Celeste dropped the phone like it had burned her. She stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at her reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. The scar seemed redder today, uglier, like it was mocking her for ever thinking she could have a normal life, forever believing that one kind man and one sweet child could change anything. "Mom," she whispered to her reflection, "I can't do this anymore." Her phone buzzed from the bedroom, text after text, some from friends expressing horror and support, others from unknown numbers, strangers who had tracked her down to deliver their cruelty directly into her hands. She turned off her phone and crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over her head like she used to do as a child when thunderstorms frightened her. But there was no mother to come comfort her now. Across town, Piper Ashford was having the worst day of her life. Recess had always been her favorite time. She loved the swings, loved the monkey bars, loved playing pretend with her friends on the big climbing structure they called the castle. But today, her friends were different. "Your dad kissed a monster." The boy who said it was named Tyler. He had been in Piper's class since kindergarten and had never been mean before. But his mother had shown him the video at breakfast, clucking her tongue and making comments about some people. And children repeat what they hear. "She's not a monster." Piper's hands balled into fists at her sides. "My mom said she's a freak," another child chimed in. "She said your dad must be crazy to kiss someone like that." "She's a superhero. She has lightning on her face because she fought a fire." "Superheroes aren't ugly," Tyler laughed. "She's the ugliest person I ever saw. My mom said so." Piper pushed him. It was not a hard push. Not really, but Tyler was not expecting it. He fell backward onto the soft playground surface, more surprised than hurt, and immediately began to cry. 10 minutes later, Piper sat in the principal's office, her small feet not reaching the floor, her hands folded in her lap the way her father had taught her. Bennett arrived with panic in his eyes. He had just seen the video on his drive to work, had just read the comments, had just realized what his daughter must be facing at school. The principal explained what happened: the pushing, the yelling, the disruption of the entire recess period. "It's her first offense," the principal said, "but we take physical aggression very seriously at Riverside Elementary." Bennett nodded, made the appropriate apologies, and led Piper to the car. They sat in the parking lot for a moment, the engine off, autumn leaves drifting past the windshield. "You can't push people, baby, even when they're being mean." "But Daddy, they said horrible things about Miss Celeste. They called her ugly. They called her a monster." "I know, and that was wrong of them, but pushing doesn't solve anything." Piper was quiet for a moment, her small forehead wrinkled with thought. "Daddy, I think Miss Celeste needs a family. We could be her family, couldn't we?" Bennett's chest tightened. His daughter had lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago. Mia had fought so hard, had smiled through the chemotherapy and the hospital stays and the slow dimming of her light, all because she wanted Piper to remember her as someone who never gave up. And here was their daughter, who had learned too young that the people you love can disappear, opening her heart to a woman she had met only once. "I don't know, baby. Things are complicated right now." "Why?" "Because the world is cruel," Bennett thought. "Because people like Brinley exist. Because Celeste might never trust anyone again after this." But what he said was, "Let's just see what happens." That evening, Piper sat at the kitchen table with her crayons while Bennett made spaghetti. She drew for almost an hour, her tongue poking out in concentration, selecting each color with the seriousness of an artist choosing paints. Blue for the sky, yellow for the lightning, purple for the cape, because every superhero needed a cape. "Daddy, I'm done." Bennett came to look, wiping his hands on a dish towel. The drawing showed a woman standing on a mountain. She had yellow lightning bolts on her face, and her arms were raised to a sky full of stars. A cape streamed behind her in an invisible wind. At the bottom, in wobbly 7-year-old handwriting, "Lightning Lady, she beat the fire, and now she can beat anything." Bennett felt his eyes sting. He took a photo and sent it to Celeste. The message arrived at 11:43 p.m. Celeste had not left her bed all day, had not eaten, had not answered any of the calls from Bennett or her friends or her therapist. The curtains were drawn, the apartment was dark, but something made her look at this one message. Piper's drawing filled her screen. A woman with lightning on her face, standing tall on a mountain, reaching for the stars. "Lightning Lady, she beat the fire, and now she can beat anything." For the first time in 20 hours, Celeste smiled. Then another message arrived. Unknown number. "Stop attracting attention, or I'll make sure the world knows your role in that fire." The smile died on her face. Her role? She was the victim. She had nearly died trying to save her mother. What role could anyone possibly think she had? Another message. "Your mother would still be alive if it weren't for you. Keep your mouth shut." Celeste's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. The coffee shop was quiet at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. Celeste sat across from Henry Callahan, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and a folder thick with papers. He was a fire investigator with the city, and he had a case that had haunted him for years. "Miss Marlowe, I tried to reach you after the fire," he began, his voice gentle but direct. "But you were in and out of surgeries for months. Then you moved, changed your number. When I saw that video going viral, I finally tracked you down. Why were you looking for me?" He opened the folder and slid a document across the table. "Because the fire that killed your mother was not an accident." Celeste felt the world tilt beneath her. "What?" "The smoke detectors in your building were disabled. Deliberately, the owner, a man named Gerald Rost, shut off the entire fire safety system to avoid paying $200 a month in maintenance fees." No. Celeste shook her head, the coffee shop suddenly feeling very far away. That can't be right. They told me it was electrical. They said these things happen in old buildings. They told you what Ross' lawyers wanted them to say. Henry pushed another document toward her. Your mother should have had 3 to 4 minutes of warning. Enough time to wake up, get dressed, walk calmly down the stairs. She died because that warning never came. The words hit Celeste like physical blows. All this time she had blamed herself for not being faster, for not being stronger, for failing to pull her mother from those flames. And none of it had been her fault. Gerald Ross owns 14 other buildings in the city, Henry continued. All of them have similar safety violations. All of them are full of families who go to sleep every night not knowing that if a fire starts, they won't get any warning. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been trying to build a case against him for years, and I keep hitting walls. He has money, connections, lawyers who make evidence disappear, and witnesses change their minds. Henry leaned forward, his tired eyes meeting hers. But you, Miss Marlowe, you're a survivor. You have a scar that the whole world just saw. You could be the face this case needs. I can't. The words came out automatically, a reflex built over years of hiding. I can barely leave my apartment. I can't go public. I understand. Henry gathered his papers slowly. But think about it. Every day that man stays free, more people are at risk. Your mother can't speak for herself anymore. But you can. He left his card on the table. Celeste sat alone for a long time, staring at the evidence of her mother's murder. The threat came that night, not to Celeste this time. Bennett stared at his phone, at the message from an unknown number, and felt his blood turn to ice. Your daughter goes to Riverside Elementary, doesn't she? Would be a shame if something happened during recess. She has to stay with Aunt Maren for a few days. Maren, Bennett's younger sister, lived 20 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood full of old trees and friendly dogs. She had offered to help the moment Bennett called, no questions asked. That was who Maren was. Reliable, steady, the kind of person who showed up. Bennett knelt in front of Piper in Maren's living room, trying to keep his voice calm even as terror clawed at his chest. But why, Daddy? I don't want to leave you. Just for a little while, baby. I need to take care of something important. Piper's eyes widened with understanding far beyond her years. Is it about Lightning Lady? Is someone trying to hurt her? Bennett could not lie to his daughter. Yes. Then you have to help her, Daddy. Piper's voice was fierce, the same fierceness she had shown on the playground. She already lost her mommy. She can't lose anyone else. Celeste stood in her bathroom at midnight, staring at her reflection. She had turned on every light. No shadows, no hiding. Just her face fully illuminated, every inch of damaged skin visible. All this time, she whispered to the woman in the mirror, I blame myself. I thought I wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough. I thought Mom died because I failed her. Her hand rose to touch the scar. For once, she did not flinch. But it wasn't me. It was never me. Her voice grew stronger. She was murdered by a man who valued $200 a month more than human lives. Something shifted in her chest. The weight she had carried since the fire did not disappear, but it changed shape. Grief remained. Grief would probably always remain, but the guilt, the crushing, suffocating guilt, began to crack. This scar is not my fault. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's proof that I survived, proof that I fought, proof that I'm still here when someone tried to take everything from me. She looked at her reflection, really looked, and for the first time since the fire, she did not see a monster. She saw a woman who had been through hell and was still standing. The fundraiser was scheduled for Saturday night at a hotel in Manhattan. Dr. Adize Okonkwo had organized it, as she did every year. She was the surgeon who had saved Celeste's life, who had performed 16 operations to reconstruct what the fire had destroyed. The event raised money for burn survivors and their families. 200 guests, live streaming, press coverage. This year, she wanted Celeste to speak. "I know it's terrifying," Dr. Okonkwo said, her voice calm and steady. "But I watched you fight for your life on my operating table. I watched you learn to walk again, to eat again, to face mirrors again. You are stronger than you know." Marcus Reed sat beside Celeste in the doctor's office. He was a journalist who had been investigating Gerald Rost for 2 years, collecting evidence that no one would print because Rost's lawyers were too powerful. "I have documentation of 3 other suspicious fires in Rost buildings," Marcus said. "3 other families destroyed, but documents aren't enough. I need a face, a story, someone brave enough to stand up and say this happened to me and it wasn't an accident." "He's threatening people I love." Celeste's voice was barely above a whisper. He threatened Bennett's daughter." "That's exactly why you need to speak." Marcus leaned forward. "He's threatening you because he's scared. Scared of what happens when the truth comes out. If you stay silent, he wins. He keeps destroying lives. But if you speak up, if you show the world who he really is—" Celeste closed her eyes. All those years of hiding, of shame, of letting fear make every decision. "I've been running for so long," she said finally. "Maybe it's time to stop." The hotel ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and silk tablecloths. 200 guests in elegant evening wear. Cameras positioned around the room for the live stream that would reach thousands more. Celeste stood backstage, trembling. Her hair was pulled back. No hiding tonight. She had chosen a simple blue dress that left her neck and shoulder bare, letting the scar show in its entirety for the first time in public. Bennett appeared beside her. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She turned to face him, this man who had kissed her scar in a dark alley, who had stood beside her through threats and fear and pain. "My mother can't speak for herself anymore, but I can. I have to." He took her hand and squeezed. "I'll be right in the front row." "I know." The MC's voice echoed through the ballroom, introducing her. Celeste walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. She could barely see the audience, but she could feel them. 200 people staring at her face, at her scar, at the damage she had hidden for so long. Her prepared speech evaporated from her mind. She was going to fail. She was going to freeze. She was going to run like she always ran. And Gerald Rost would win, and nothing would ever change. Then she saw Piper. The little girl had begged Aunt Marin for 3 straight days. "Please, please, please. I have to see Lightning Lady's show. She needs me there. Superheroes need their sidekicks." Marin, who had never been able to refuse those enormous blue eyes, finally gave in. Piper sat in the front row beside her father, holding up her drawing of Lightning Lady. "You can beat anything!" Her small voice rang through the silent ballroom, and something shifted inside Celeste. She stepped up to the microphone. "A fire took my mother from me. It almost took my life, and I've been hiding from the world ever since." Her voice was steadier than she expected. "For a long time, I thought what happened was my fault. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't save her, and I've carried that guilt every single day." She paused, letting the words settle over the silent room. "But I recently learned the truth. The smoke detectors in our building were deliberately disabled. The owner, Gerald Rost, turned them off to save $200 a month in maintenance fees. My mother should have had 4 minutes of warning. 4 minutes to wake up and walk to safety. She died because that warning never came." Murmurs rippled through the audience. "Gerald Rost owns 14 other buildings in this city. 14 buildings filled with families who go to sleep every night, not knowing that if a fire starts, no alarm will sound. 14 buildings full of mothers and daughters and children who could die the way my mother died. Celeste looked directly into the main camera, knowing Rost would see this, knowing he was probably watching right now. Mr. Rost, I know you're watching. I know you've been threatening me, threatening the people I love, trying to scare me into silence. She touched her scar. But I'm not afraid of you anymore. This mark on my face is not something to be ashamed of. It's proof that I survived, and I will use my survival to make sure no one else has to die because of your greed. The room erupted in applause that seemed to shake the chandeliers. The video went viral within hours. 4 million views in the first 24 hours. The hashtag Justice for Ruth trended nationally. 2 other families came forward with their own stories of fires in Rost's buildings, of loved ones lost, of suspicions they had been afraid to voice. And then the attention turned to Brinley. Her original video resurfaced, but now the narrative had completely inverted. She was no longer the clever documenter of a first-date horror show. She was the bully who had tried to destroy a brave woman's life. Comments flooded her post by the thousands. You mocked a burn survivor? What is wrong with you? She lost her mother in that fire and you made fun of her scars for clout? Unfollowing immediately, you're disgusting. I hope you never know what it's like to be judged for something you can't control. The brands noticed. Within 48 hours, every sponsor had released nearly identical statements. We do not condone bullying or harassment. Our partnership with this influencer has been terminated effective immediately. Her follower count plummeted. 2.3 million became 1.8 million, then 1.2 million, then below a million for the first time in 4 years. Someone found her connection to Bennett. She bullied her own cousin's girlfriend? Someone else discovered the old NYU art competition results. She's been jealous of Celeste for 8 years. This is unhinged. Brinley posted an apology video, tears streaming down her perfect face, mascara artfully smudged. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was just making a joke. I'm so sorry. No one believed her. Her account was suspended for harassment. Her carefully constructed empire, built on filters and cruelty, collapsed in less than a week. Celeste never mentioned her name, never responded to interview questions about her. Some battles did not require fighting. Karma handled them perfectly well on its own. 1 week later, Celeste stood in a crowd outside Rost Properties headquarters. Police cars surrounded the building. FBI agents in dark suits moved through the entrance. News cameras from every major network jockeyed for position on the sidewalk. And then Gerald Rost emerged. He was smaller than Celeste had imagined, older, just a man in an expensive suit with handcuffs on his wrists and fear in his eyes. Their gazes met across the crowd. For years, this man had haunted her without her even knowing it. He was the shadow behind her mother's death, the reason for her scars, the source of all the guilt she had carried for so long. Now he was just a criminal being led to a police car. Celeste stood tall. She did not cover her face, did not let her hair fall over her scar, did not shrink away from the cameras. Gerald Rost was the one who looked away first. Marcus appeared beside her, his notebook in hand. You did it. We did it, she corrected. All of us. 1 month later, the sun was setting over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that Celeste's artist eye cataloged automatically. She sat on Bennett's porch, a canvas on her lap, brushes scattered around her on newspapers spread to protect the wood. She had started painting again, but not the landscapes and still lifes of her previous career. Not the safe subjects that required nothing of her heart. Now she painted people, survivors. Men and women with scars and burns and marks that the world too often called ugly. She called the series Scar Light. Bennett came out with 2 cups of tea and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Who is this one? His name is James. a veteran who was burned in Afghanistan. He saw my speech online and reached out. Celeste's brush paused over the canvas. He said it was the first time in 6 years he didn't feel completely alone. Bennett studied the painting. James's burns covered most of his face, but Celeste had painted him looking upward, light falling across his skin, his expression peaceful. It's beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. When Mia was dying, Bennett said softly, "She made me promise something." She said, "Don't let Piper grow up thinking love is something that disappears. Show her that hearts can heal. Show her that it's okay to love again." He turned to face Celeste. "I didn't really understand what she meant, not until I met you." Celeste set down her brush. "That night at the bar, when I first saw you," Bennett took her hand, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. "I didn't see your scar. I saw a woman who was terrified but showed up anyway. I saw courage. I saw someone who reminded me of Mia, of the strength she had in those last months when everything was falling apart." His eyes met hers. "I love you, Celeste, not despite your scar. I love all of you. The scar is part of your story, and your story is beautiful." Celeste felt tears sliding down her cheeks, tears that fell freely now, without shame. "I love you too." He kissed her softly as the last light of day faded into dusk. 1 year later, the gallery in Manhattan gleamed with polished floors and pristine white walls. Track lighting illuminated each piece with careful precision. Scarlight, an exhibition by Celeste Marlowe. 20 portraits line the walls. 20 survivors. 20 stories of pain and healing and courage. Each painting captured not just the scars, but the light in the subject's eyes. The humanity that no fire could destroy. Celeste stood in the center of the opening night crowd, accepting congratulations, answering questions about her work and her journey. She wore a black dress that left her scar fully visible. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. She had not hidden her face in almost a year now. Bennett and Piper stood near the entrance, watching her. Piper was 8 now, her curly hair longer, her blue eyes just as bright. "Daddy," she tugged at his sleeve. "Mommy Celeste looks so pretty." Bennett went completely still. Piper had not called anyone mommy since Mia died. Not once in 2 years. She had invented various names for Celeste over the past year. Lightning Lady, of course. Then Miss Celeste. Then just Celeste. But never that word. Never the word that belonged to the woman in the photographs on their mantelpiece. "What did you say, baby?" Piper looked up at him with her mother's eyes. "Mommy Celeste. Can I call her that?" She twisted her hands together, suddenly uncertain. "I know Mommy Mia is in heaven watching us, but I think Mommy Mia would be happy if I had another mommy here too. Someone to braid my hair and read me stories and come to my school plays." Bennett's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly, his throat too tight for words. "You need to ask her, sweetheart," he finally managed. "That's a very big thing to ask someone." Piper nodded solemnly and marched across the gallery, weaving through the well-dressed crowd with determination. Celeste was talking to an art critic when she felt a small hand grab hers. "Piper, hi, sweetheart. Are you having fun?" "Miss Celeste?" Piper's voice was unusually serious, her small face tilted up. "Can I call you Mommy?" The question hit Celeste like a wave. She thought of her own mother, of the paintings Ruth Marlowe had hung on her walls with such pride, of her voice saying, "My daughter's going to be famous," of the smoke creeping under the door, of the empty space in her heart that had ached for so long. She knelt down so she was eye level with Piper. "You want me to be your mommy?" Piper nodded, her eyes bright with hope and fear. "You already feel like my mommy. You make Daddy smile again. You make me feel safe. And you're the bravest person I know." She reached out and touched Celeste's scar with small, gentle fingers. Please. Celeste pulled the little girl into her arms and held her tight, tears streaming down her face, not caring who in the crowded gallery might see. Yes, she whispered. Yes, baby. I would love to be your mommy. She pulled back just enough to look into Piper's eyes. I choose you too. Bennett appeared beside them, his own eyes red, and wrapped his arms around both of them. They stood there in the middle of the gallery opening, oblivious to the crowd around them, a family, finally whole. Later that evening, when most of the guests had gone home, Celeste led Piper to the final painting in the exhibition. It hung alone on the back wall, separate from the others, larger, more personal, a portrait of a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. No scars, no burns, just love, captured in careful brushstrokes. Ruth Marlowe, 1968-2021, in loving memory. Who is this, Mommy? The words sent warmth spreading through Celeste's chest. This is your grandmother. Her name was Ruth, my mother. Piper studied the painting with the serious attention of a child who understood that some things mattered more than others. She's really pretty. She was. Celeste smiled through her tears. She was the one who taught me to paint. She always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. She's in heaven now? Like my first mommy? Yes, baby, she's in heaven. Piper was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she looked up at Celeste with those wise, clear eyes that seemed to see things adults had forgotten how to see. Mommy, your scar is the fire's energy, but now it's turned into light. Celeste could not speak, could barely breathe. How did a child understand something that had taken her so long and so much pain to learn? She kissed the top of Piper's head. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. You're absolutely right. The exhibition closed at 10, but Celeste lingered. She stood before her mother's portrait one last time, Bennett on one side, Piper holding her hand on the other. I did it, Mom, she whispered to the painting. I stopped hiding. I told the truth. And I found a family again. The portrait smiled its painted smile, and Celeste could almost hear her mother's voice. I always knew you would. Bennett squeezed her shoulder. Piper yawned and leaned against her legs, exhausted from the excitement of the evening. Ready to go home? Bennett asked. Home, the word used to mean the apartment where her mother died. Then it meant the dark studio where she had hidden from the world. Now it meant something else entirely, something better. Yes, let's go home. They walked out of the gallery together, into the bright lights of the New York City night. Celeste did not cover her face. The scar that had once been her greatest shame was simply part of her now, like her brown eyes or her artist's hands. The light from the street lamps caught the twisted skin on her cheek and made it glow. Piper had been right all along, from that very first night in the bar. Scars are not darkness. They are proof of survival, and survival is the most brilliant light of all.